Before we begin, I want you to prepare yourself for rest. Lower the lights around you. Let the noise of the day fade gently into silence. Whether you're lying in bed or simply curled up in a quiet corner, this is your time now. Time to let your body soften, your breath slow, and your thoughts drift far away to a time long before ours. Tonight, we journey to the far north, not just to the icy fjords and snow-laced forests of the Viking world, but into the very heart of their social life, the Longhouse feast. But be warned, these weren't your average dinner parties. If you've ever wished to travel back in time and sit beside roaring hearths with hardened warriors, you might want to think twice. The rules were different. The food was different. The danger, always close at hand. So, if your eyes are already getting heavy, let them close. Let your mind paint the images as I speak. And if you enjoy drifting through history like this, don't forget to softly tap the like button. And consider subscribing, so you never miss a tale beneath the stars. Now, let's step into the Longhouse and find out why you just might not survive a dinner party with the Vikings. The Longhouse Beckons. Imagine a vast and wintry plain, the sky overhead cast in shades of gray and violet, where the northern sun lingers low on the horizon even at midday. The air is cold, but not biting, just enough to encourage you to pull your cloak a little tighter, to draw warmth from your breath as it swirls visibly before you. You are no longer in your own time, but somewhere far older, somewhere wilder. Your boots crunch through snow-slick earth, and ahead of you rises a structure like none you've ever seen. It stretches long and low against the wind, framed in rough-hewn timbers, its thatched roof weighed down with stone and snow. This is the Longhouse, the pulse of Viking domestic life. Tonight, it will be the beating heart of celebration, of tension, of ritual, and of unspoken danger. The door is carved with runes, faded but firm, wards of protection and reverence to the gods. You approach it slowly, sensing that stepping through means stepping into a world with rules not written in any book you've read. These rules live in blood memory, passed from mouth to ear, from father to son, and from the old woman at the fire to the child on her lap. The door creaks open not with a servant's bow, but with a heavy, dragging resistance. You are not greeted. You are not announced. Instead, you are observed. A handful of eyes look up from shadowed corners, glinting in the firelight, assessing you as you step forward, not with malice, but with the cool curiosity of those who have seen much and trust little. The scent inside is thick. Smoke curls lazily toward a central roof vent, never quite escaping. Beneath it, a great hearth blazes, casting warm orange light on rough stone and bare wood. The smells of cooked meat, fermented grain, damp wool, and earth mingle in a way both alien and oddly grounding. Here, people do not dine at tables draped in linen. There are no candles in delicate holders, no clinking of polished silverware. Instead, great benches run down the sides of the Longhouse, with rough wooden planks serving as communal tables. Horn cups glisten with spilled mead, and bones of past meals are tossed not into bins, but sometimes simply to the side, for later dogs to find. And now, let us take our time here. Let us walk slowly through this space so that you may fully feel it. On one end of the Longhouse, a raised platform marks the high seat, a throne of sorts draped in pelts and flanked by carved wooden animal heads. This is where the chieftain or host sits, and tonight you are not the chieftain. No, you are the outsider, a visitor, perhaps even an interloper. Your clothing is wrong, your manner too polished. You smell of foreign lands and soft soap. And in this place, where scars tell stories and silence commands respect, that makes you interesting, and perhaps, just perhaps, vulnerable. Along the central fire, large pots simmer with stews of unknown origin. You may think you are prepared for what is served. You are not, but that comes later. For now, your eyes are adjusting. You notice that the Longhouse is not just a place for feasting, but for sleeping, for working, for being. Along the edges lie bundles of cloth, bedding for some, storage for others. Tools hang from hooks. Skins dry along rafters. Children dart in and out of shadows, barefoot and wild-eyed, while the elders mutter low, half in jest, half in warning. You take a seat, but did you choose it? Or was it chosen for you? That, too, is part of the game. Seating is status, and in Viking society, honor and humiliation live side by side, only ever a breath apart. But we will speak of that soon. For now, sit. Let the warmth of the fire thaw your limbs. Let the thick woolen tunics itch your skin. You are here now, no going back. Overhead, smoke gathers like a memory, dark and soft. The crackle of firewood becomes your rhythm. You begin to notice the language, low tones, few wasted words. Men and women speak plainly, with authority in their eyes rather than their voices. And when they laugh deeply, suddenly, and often with something sharp underneath. To your left, a man sharpens a blade, not because he needs it for dinner, but because that is what his hands do when idle. To your right, a woman stares at you longer than she should, as if deciding whether you are worthy of notice or just another fleeting shadow to be ignored. Still with me? Are your eyes still open, or have they begun to lower, heavy with warmth and smoke? If you're not in a hurry to fall asleep, I wonder, would you still have entered, knowing what awaits? Tell me in the comments, how do you think you'd handle the weight of all those silent stares? But for now, let the Longhouse hold you. Let the scent of wood smoke and mead, of roasted meats and damp wool, wrap around you like a woolen cloak. Let the ancient timbers whisper above you. You have been welcomed in their own way, or at least tolerated. The night is only beginning, and the rules of the feast are still unwritten, at least to you. But be patient. In time, you'll learn how to survive. Or not. Arrival amid ice and iron. You arrived with breath steaming and heart pounding. But in truth, your journey began long before you reached the Longhouse door. Let us go back just a little further. The path to the Viking feast is not a gentle one, and to understand the weight of this gathering, we must walk with care through the landscape that shaped it. Through a world carved in cold and shadow, molded not by comfort but by necessity, by ritual, and by the ever-present closeness of life and death. Imagine rising in the early light of what passes for day in the northern lands, a soft, gray illumination that never quite becomes brightness. The sun, low and withdrawn, casts long blue shadows on the frost-covered earth. You are a traveler, dressed in unfamiliar furs, your hands half numb even before your boots crunch the first layer of brittle ice. You had thought yourself strong, resilient. But strength here is measured not in words, not in posture, but in how well your breath mists in rhythm with the wind, how steady your steps remain when there is no path to follow. The cold is not violent, not the biting sting you expect, but something deeper. It seeps in quietly, patiently, wrapping itself around your bones, inviting you to surrender, There is no snowstorm, no howling gale, just the slow pressure of a land that has outlived generations without offering warmth. The path is not marked. You follow the memory of a river, now frozen, winding like a silver thread through sparse black trees. Ravens watch you from crooked branches, their eyes gleaming with something more than animal instinct. They do not caw, nor take flight. They simply observe, as if judging your worth or your fate. The further you walk, the more the silence begins to speak. It tells you of lives spent chasing the edge of survival, of people who do not waste words because the wind will steal them. You pass burial mounds, not grand but solemn, earthen shoulders rising from the snow. There are no gravestones, no inscriptions, only small stone cairns and twisted branches planted like sentinels. You begin to understand, then, that to live here is not merely to persist, but to weave one's life into the fabric of the land, to become part of it even before death arrives. You come upon a small cluster of homes, half dug into the earth like burrows. Children, their cheeks ruddy from wind, dart between shadows, their laughter sharp and brief before it vanishes into the frost. They wear thick wool, patched furs, and expressions too old for their years. One stares at you, thumb in mouth, eyes set to steady. You offer a nod. The child does not return it. Not out of rudeness, but because you do not yet belong. A woman stands nearby, her back bent under a bundle of wood. She does not greet you either. Here, pleasantries are not the custom. Only action. Only effort. She glances toward a thin trail of smoke rising beyond a hill, and you follow her gaze. That is your destination, the great Longhouse. As you continue, the landscape begins to change. The trees grow thinner, the wind more insistent. You crest a ridge and see it at last. Long and dark against the snow, the Longhouse sits like a ship run aground. Its roof is low, heavy with ice, its walls of timber chinked with moss and earth. But it stands strong, defiant. This is not a home built for beauty. It is built to endure. Two standing stones flank the approach, worn and moss-covered, but unmistakably marked. You do not understand the runes, not fully, but they carry meaning nonetheless. A warning, an invitation, perhaps both. You pass beneath them, and the temperature seems to shift. Not warmer, but thicker, as if the air here carries more memory, more story, more weight. You begin to hear voices, faint at first, rising from within the Longhouse like smoke itself. Not cheerful chatter, but the low murmur of gathering strength. You are not alone in your approach. Others have come. Warriors with fur-lined cloaks and axes slung casually across their backs. Women with intricate braids and cold, appraising eyes. Elderly figures with staffs, bones, and a silence that demands respect. No one welcomes you. No one speaks, but still you walk among them. And now you notice the weapons. Not just on hips or strapped across backs, but resting beside doorways, embedded in the snow, even clutched in half-gloved hands. It is a feast, yes, but one where trust is measured in steel. You realize, slowly, that this is no gathering of friends. It is a balance of alliances, a negotiation of strength, a display of unspoken threats, made visible only through posture, tone, and who is permitted to sit where. Still, you press forward. The door is thick and heavy, wrapped in animal hide. As it creaks open once more, the warmth hits you like a wave. Not just heat, but sound, scent, movement. Inside is another world. Flickering light from the central fire casts everything in gold and shadow. The air is dense with smoke and breath, and the metallic tang of blood long cleaned but never quite forgotten. Your arrival does not go unnoticed. A few heads turn, a few eyes linger, but no words are spoken. You are not asked to explain yourself. You are simply measured, not for your charm or cleverness or tales, but for what you carry, not in your hands, but in your spine, in the way you meet their gaze, or don't. You take a seat, not at the high table, not yet, but near the edge, where guests often begin, and still you feel the pull of the fire, the smell of roasting meat, the sounds of distant instruments tuning for a night of revelry and reckoning. You are here. But what is here, truly? It is more than a building, more than a gathering. It is the center of their world, a place where alliances are made and broken, where gods are honored and tested, where laughter often masks contempt, and where a single word spoken at the wrong time could end with steel drawn and reputations shattered. A servant passes, or is she a servant? There are no uniforms, no clear roles. She offers you a carved wooden cup filled with thick, sweet mead. You sip, and the warmth travels not just down your throat, but through your chest, loosening muscles you hadn't noticed were clenched. It tastes of honey, of fermentation, of earth and fire. You wonder how many mouths have touched this cup before yours. Across the room, an old man watches you. His hair is long and silver, his beard braided with beads of bone and iron. He does not blink. You hold his gaze for a moment too long, then look away. A mistake? Perhaps, perhaps not. Someone laughs loudly, then abruptly stops. The mood shifts. You feel it, though no words were exchanged. Every breath here matters. Every glance is a move in a game you do not yet understand. And still, the fire burns. Still with me? If your eyes are half-lidded now, if the hum of imagined voices blends with the warmth of your blanket or pillow, then let it deepen. Let it carry you. But if you're still listening, truly listening, tell me this. What would you do if you were offered a seat at the high table? Would you take it, risking offense? Or decline, risking weakness? Share your thoughts below if your fingers haven't yet slipped into sleep. The Longhouse is full now. The doors are closed. The feast will begin soon, and you, outsider, must learn quickly, for what happens next will test more than just your palate. It will test your place in a world of ice and iron. Where you sit tells your worth. The Longhouse is full now. The wind outside whispers through the cracks in the timbers, testing for weakness and finding none. Inside, the air is thick, not heavy, no, but rich, as if steeped in stories and seasoned with generations of breath. The fire at the center of the room crackles with confidence, its flames rising and falling like a conversation too ancient to be overheard. Shadows sway upon the walls like spirits half-remembered. You sit where they have placed you, not at the edge of the hearth, but not near the head either. It is a position of neutrality, of observation for now. But in this hall, where hierarchy is etched not into stone or scrolls, but into the unspoken rhythms of ritual, where you sit is not just a matter of comfort or view. It is your worth, your role, your test. There are no place cards, no polite requests, no smiling stewards to guide you to your seat with a bow. Here, seating is a subtle ceremony of power, respect, reputation, and risk. At the far end, the high seat looms, a wide and solid chair carved from oak, its armrests worn smooth by the hands of leaders long dead. Behind it hangs a hide, painted in deep ochre, with symbols only the eldest can truly read. On either side, Seats of honor are arranged in descending importance, like ripples from a stone cast into still water. Each man and woman at that end of the hall has earned their place with blood, trade, marriage, or valor, or, in some cases, through secrets known and favors owed. Closer to the middle, the warriors sit, their weapons near, their laughter loud, their eyes always watching. They do not sit in silence. They thump their mugs, slap backs, and call each other names that would curdle wine in softer lands. And yet, beneath the roughness lies a strict code, one that is never spoken, but which all here understand. Every jest, every taunt, every tale shared carries a deeper layer. Here, a story is not just a story. It is a demonstration of bravery, of cleverness, of belonging. Farther down still, the seats grow less grand. The mead flows more slowly. The food arrives cooler. These are the seats for guests, not disrespected, no, but not quite trusted either. Here is where the strangers sit, the traitors, the outliers, and tonight, you. You sit among others like you, faces half shrouded by hoods, eyes darting more than resting. One man beside you fiddles with the leather strap of his pouch. Another stares into the fire as though trying to will it to speak his language. Across the table, a woman with a jagged scar running from her jaw to her collarbone picks at a bone with deliberate precision. None of you speak, yet you all understand. This is the waiting place. You do not eat until the host eats. You do not speak until the fire has heard enough silence. And you do not rise, not unless summoned, or unless you wish to become part of the entertainment, willingly or not. Your position and your future are decided not by what you say, but by what others say about you, what they remember, what they whisper after your name. You may have wealth in your own land, titles perhaps, influence, but here none of that matters. Only reputation, only deeds, only the strength of your spine and the calm in your eyes. And so you sit, but your senses are sharp. You notice the structure of it all, the unspoken order in chaos, the way food is passed first to the inner circle, the way servers, young men and women of the household, move in tight, practiced patterns, favoring some with full horns of mead and others with only the dregs. The way eyes flick toward the high seat every few moments, not out of fear, but respect, or something colder. You learn, in these quiet minutes, the truth. In this world, your survival depends on how well you read the room, and this room reads like a battlefield. To misjudge your place is to challenge the very structure of the evening. To sit too high is to provoke. To hover too low is to invite disregard. There is no clear line. The art lies in being known and being noticed just enough. No more. From your vantage, you study the high seat. Tonight it is occupied by a woman, tall, broad-shouldered, her hair braided thick with rings of bone and bronze. Her expression is unreadable. She listens far more than she speaks. And when she does speak, the entire room leans forward, ever so slightly, as if gravity itself had shifted. To her right, a younger man, likely her son, tosses meat to the dogs that wander between the tables. To her left, a man with a face weathered like an old boot drinks slowly, never looking at anyone directly. His cloak is darker than the rest, not dyed, just stained with time and wear. He has killed, that much is clear. But what matters more is that he remembers every name, every story, every slight. He is the memory of this place. Around them, the inner circle watches. Each guest at the high table carries themselves with that peculiar ease that comes from knowing their place is secure, or from being skilled enough to maintain the illusion. Jewelry glints in the firelight, not as decoration, but as trophy. Rings carved with runes. Torques twisted from the silver of fallen enemies. Every piece tells a tale, but no one tells them aloud. Here, objects speak louder than stories. And still you sit. Someone offers you a slice of smoked fish, laid on rough bread, thick with unfamiliar herbs. You accept with a nod. To refuse would be impolite. To speak thanks might mark you as too eager. You eat in silence. The fish is salty, the bread coarse, the herbs bitter. But you chew, and you swallow, and you do not make a face. That, too, is a kind of speech. And then, without warning, a name is called. Not yours, not yet, but someone else's from a few seats over. A young man rises. His name echoes in the timber beams. He smiles, bows his head slightly, and steps forward. All eyes follow. He stands before the high seat. The chieftain says a few words, something about a favor owed, a deed done. A horn of mead is passed to him, and he drinks deeply. Then she gestures. A servant brings him a seat closer to the hearth, closer to the center. He has risen. And in his rising, you understand. This feast is not a simple meal. It is a theater of status, a dance of eyes and posture. Each person here is being weighed, evaluated, not just for what they have done, but for what they might do. The seat you occupy is a statement. The seat you are offered is the truth. And still you wait. Behind you, a dog brushes your leg. You don't startle. Good. In the corner, an old man begins to hum, a low and steady note that pulses like a heartbeat beneath the sound of fire and feast. Around you, laughter rises again, short bursts like flint against steel. Someone slaps a table. A cup spills. The mead is flowing. The real night is beginning. And yet, you know now what you did not before. You are being watched. Not by one, by all. They are waiting to see how you carry your weight. Whether you lean forward too eagerly. Whether you laugh too loudly. Whether you meet the eyes of the high seat, or keep your gaze where it belongs. They are not unkind, but they are judging. And perhaps, just perhaps, they are wondering where you will sit next time. Still listening? Still awake, in the hush between firelight and frost? If so, tell me, if you had to choose, would you sit close to the high seat and risk being challenged, or sit further down and risk being forgotten? Share your answer below, if your eyes haven't closed yet. The room hums, the night thickens. And you, well, you are learning, not just how to sit, but how to survive. The mead flows like thunder. The fire crackles low, casting long golden ribbons across the timbered ceiling as the shadows begin to sway like dancers lost in their rhythm. Outside, the night deepens. The wind curls along the edges of the longhouse, testing its seam like a prowling wolf. But within these walls, the warmth grows bolder. The tension shifts. You feel it first, not with your eyes or ears, but with something deeper, a rising current that threads through the wooden floor beneath your boots, through the benches, through the breath of the crowd. It is subtle at first, a glance too long, a laugh just a little louder than before, a clink of horn cups as they are filled, and then filled again. And again. This, now, is the true start of the feast. The mead flows. Thick, golden, and heady, it pours from clay jugs and leather wineskins into carved horns and wooden mugs, passed hand to hand like an offering from the gods themselves. Its scent is sharp and sweet, fermented honey laced with herbs, possibly nettle or bog myrtle. There is no precise recipe. Each household brews its own, each batch slightly different. Some are smooth, some sting like a slap, and some, like the one handed to you now, settle into the bones like warm smoke curling around a forgotten memory. You raise the cup, you sip, you feel the warmth bloom slowly behind your ribs. Not a fire, but an ember, just enough to unfasten the stiffness from your shoulders, just enough to blur the edges of doubt. But this is not a drink for indulgence alone. It is a tool, a weapon, a test. For in the Viking Longhouse, mead is not just fermented honey water. It is the invitation to speak, to challenge, to reveal, and to stumble. It loosens tongues, but it also strips masks. With every refill, the mood shifts. What was quiet becomes loud. What was tense becomes unpredictable. A warrior 3 seats down slams his mug upon the table and begins a tale. A hunt, he claims, one deep in the northern hills, where a bear as tall as a man charged him from a thicket. He acts it out with dramatic flourish, swiping a ham bone through the air to illustrate the beast's claws. Laughter erupts, not at the story, but at his exuberance. Others shout their disbelief. One calls him a liar in jest, or perhaps not in jest. This is the theater of the Mead Hall, and you are now part of it. To your left, 2 women argue over a name. A shared lover, it seems, or perhaps a disputed inheritance. Their voices rise like song, sharp and rhythmic, and the hall listens. One of them, you realize, is seated much closer to the fire than you are. That is not by accident. To your right, a man recites poetry. Not the kind written with ink on vellum, but the kind forged in firelight and breath. Old tales of Odin and Freya, of wolves that devour the sun, of ships carved from the fingernails of the dead. His voice carries, not loud, but deep, steady, as though the words are older than his body. People listen, even the dogs still. And through it all, the mead flows. Its passage is not random. It is strategic. Certain jugs are passed more frequently. Certain mugs are kept full longer. Those whom the host wishes to embolden or expose are kept well lubricated. Others are left to sip slowly, forced to maintain their sharpness. There is strategy here, politics, warfare. You are offered a second cup. You take it. You sip slower this time. You are learning. The taste has changed, or your tongue has. You begin to notice flavors hidden beneath the honey. Wildflowers, a hint of smoke, the metallic tang of something aged. You swallow, and for a moment, your vision softens at the edges. The fire seems to pulse more brightly. The faces across from you shimmer as though viewed through water. A group begins to chant. A drinking song, crude and repetitive, about a man who mistook a troll wife for a bride. Everyone joins in, pounding fists on the table in rhythm. You do not know the words, but you catch the cadence. You hum along, not to blend in, but because something in the repetition soothes you. A lullaby dressed as a boast. Across the hall, someone stands too quickly. A young man, perhaps too young. His eyes gleam with too much fire. He makes a toast, raising his cup with trembling pride. The room listens, then erupts into laughter. Not cruel, but amused. He has overstepped. The mead has filled his courage faster than his wisdom. Still, no one stops him. This, too, is part of the feast. The falling and rising. The humiliation and redemption. A rite performed in fermented gold. You feel your own tongue loosening. A story forms at the edge of your mouth, a memory or a lie, or something between the two. You do not speak it. Not yet, but you feel its weight. Waiting. The mead does not demand confession, but it invites it seductively, relentlessly. A woman with frost-white hair and a face like cracked stone pours herself another cup. She has said nothing all evening, but now she sings, not words, not notes, but a low and eerie keening that threads through the bones of the room. People pause, some smile, some lower their eyes. She is known, it seems, for something. And still the mead flows. If you are still with me, if your breath has slowed, and the imagined heat of the fire glows gently against the cool edges of your pillow, then you know this truth. In this hall, no mask survives the mead. No secret stays hidden forever. If you were there, what would rise to your lips? A tale of valor, a story of shame, a name you swore never to speak again. Comment below if your fingers still move and your mind hasn't melted into dreams. What would your cup reveal? But hush now. The songs grow louder, the stories longer, and the night is only just beginning. In the Longhouse of the North, when the mead flows like thunder, even silence can become a weapon. The food wasn't what you think. You've now sat for some time in the warm, flickering glow of the Longhouse, your ears lulled by song and story, your breath matching the low pulse of firelight. The mead has curled through your limbs like liquid warmth, a patient undoing of tension. And just when you think the feast has reached its peak, when the laughter swells and the stories collide midair, the scent changes. It sneaks into your awareness slowly, like a new thread in an old tapestry, until suddenly it is unmistakable. Food. But not the kind you know. Not the clean scent of rosemary on roasted lamb, or the smooth aroma of butter melting into potatoes. Not the sweet perfume of sugar crusted over slow-baked bread. No, this scent is darker, earthier, tangled with smoke and blood and soil. It is the scent of something that still remembers the forest. Something that had to be hunted, skinned, bled, and boiled before it ever touched a fire. In the Viking longhouse, food is not a matter of indulgence. It is not plated with aesthetic intent. It is survival, made ritual. The first platter arrives. It is not carried on silver, but on a wooden board blackened from years of smoke and oil. Upon it, the centerpiece, a boiled sheep's head. The eyes are still intact, glossy and pale. The skull split clean down the middle, revealing soft tissue and tender cheek meat. Around it, other pieces, browned sausages stuffed not with grain and spice, but with offal, blood, liver, fat, and herbs gathered from crevices you would not think to name. There is no fanfare, no dramatic reveal, just quiet reverence as the elder of the house, the woman seated nearest the hearth, slices into the meat with a knife whose handle is carved with runes that may predate this very hall. She takes the first piece, not as a privilege, but as a duty. Then the platter is passed. You are not asked if you want some. You are expected to take it. To refuse would not only mark you as foreign, it would mark you as ungrateful. Worse, as fragile. Your hands move slowly. You take a portion of the cheek as the others have. It is soft, more tender than you expected. Rich with flavor, earthy, unfamiliar. There is no seasoning, not as you know it, only salt and perhaps a whisper of juniper smoke. You chew and you do not wince. That is good. That is noted. Another platter follows. This time it carries dried fish, likely cod, though here they may call it something else, something older. It is tough, leathery, pulled apart with fingers and dipped into a bowl of thick, fermented milk. The smell is sharp, like sour cheese left out in the sun. You do not let your face betray your thoughts. You dip, you eat. It is cold and tangy and sour enough to sting your teeth. But again, you swallow. Across from you, a young man crunches on something crisp. You look closer. It is not bread. It is seaweed. Dried and fried, perhaps, in bear fat or seal oil. Crisped over the edge of the hearth, it smells of salt and brine and long tidal nights. He sees you watching, tears a strip in half, and offers it. You nod and accept. It crunches, then melts slightly on your tongue. A surprising sweetness lingers. Next comes porridge, barley, and millet, thickened with goat milk and flecked with what looks like mushrooms. Maybe berries. It is hearty. Heavy. You eat slowly, aware now of how every bite is both nourishment and negotiation. The woman beside you whispers something under her breath, a prayer maybe, or a joke. You nod, though you do not understand. She smiles, just faintly. Then something stranger still. A flat cake of blood. Blood mixed with oats, pressed and baked on hot stone. Dense and dark. It breaks like soft clay in your hand. You eat it. You must. And you do not gag. Good. You are beginning to understand. The food here is not meant to impress. It is meant to endure. It is meant to stretch through long winters and unforgiving harvests. Every dish tells a story, not of opulence, but of survival, of using every part of the animal, of making fire not for show, but to live. There are delicacies, though, if you know where to look. A bowl of pickled fish eggs, buried in sand and ice for days, then uncovered like treasure and eaten with raw onions. A tray of reindeer heart, smoked for hours, sliced thin and eaten with honeycomb. A dish of fermented shark, yes, shark, buried in earth and left until the scent alone is enough to test one's bravery. Only the boldest take a piece. You notice, not all do. Still, the feast continues. Children run between the benches now, scooping up bones, licking scraps from wooden spoons. A dog barks. Another snarls. They are part of the feast, too. Nothing is wasted. You begin to feel the rhythm of it, how the food flows like the mead from center to edge, in waves of warmth and surprise. At some point, a man beside you unwraps something from a bundle of bark. Inside, lichen, soaked in animal fat. A trail food, perhaps, but offered now as an act of camaraderie. You try it. It tastes like forest and snow and fire all at once. You nod. He nods back. And then comes the moment you did not expect. A small bowl is placed before you of marrow. Rich, glossy, warmed until it trembles. The bone from which it was taken lies beside it, hollow and clean. A piece of bark is handed to you in place of a spoon. You dip it gently. The texture is smooth, and the flavor overwhelming, fatty, ancient. It is not food, it is memory, rendered edible. You swallow, and you do not speak. No one does. Because in that moment, something shifts. You are no longer merely an observer. You have eaten what they eat. You have swallowed what they swallow. You have endured, and you have not broken. Still with me? Still awake in the warmth of this imagined fire, with your belly heavy and your breath slow. If you're not asleep yet, tell me below. Could you have eaten the eye, the shark, the blood cake, or would you have passed and paid the price? Let your thoughts drift, like steam from the stew pot. In this place, food is not comfort. It is character. And now that you've eaten, truly eaten, the next course awaits. But it won't be on a plate. It will be a ritual. Rituals before the first bite, long before the first slice of meat was carved, long before Mead filled the horns, long before the dogs circled the tables for scraps and the first laughter echoed through the rafters of the Longhouse. There was a stillness. It is easy to forget now, seated in the thick of firelight and steam, surrounded by the slow hum of a feast in full bloom, that the Viking world, for all its blood and thunder, was shaped first and foremost by reverence, by ritual, by rhythm. Before a hand was lifted to feed the body, something deeper was fed. The spirit. You may think this feast began when the door opened and you crossed the threshold, or perhaps when the host called the first toast. But no, in truth it began long before that, in moments no outsider would have noticed, in actions too small to seem sacred, yet carved into the soul of Norse life. Let us travel back, not in time but in thought, before the Longhouse grew crowded, before boots tracked in snow, before voices rose in drink. Let us step into the silence before the feast, into the slow, deliberate acts that summoned not just guests, but the attention of gods. The fire must be built first, not just any fire, and not with any wood. In most halls, the central hearth is kept alive at all times, its embers smothered but never extinguished. But before a true feast, the fire is revived. A new flame must be coaxed from coal and breath. The kindling comes from chosen wood, often birch or pine, trees considered to carry good fortune. In some regions, the branches of juniper are added, their smoke believed to carry away ill spirits, or at least make them drowsy. But the most important element is not what burns, it is who lights it. Tradition dictates that this task falls to a woman. Not just any woman, the matron of the house, the hearth keeper, the quiet pillar around whom the household turns. It is she who crouches before the darkened hearth, her fingers calloused, her eyes unblinking, as she draws the spark. She may speak no words, but her mind is full of them. Prayers, wishes, warnings. Some whispered aloud, some offered in silence. All sent up with the smoke. Only once that fire is lit, once the flame licks the air with hunger, and the smoke curls toward the roof beams like an offering, can the preparations begin. The feast is not merely cooked. It is consecrated. Each ingredient has its place, each knife, each vessel. There is no random stirring, no idle slicing. Every step, from salting the meat to kneading the bread to crushing the herbs, is done with the knowledge that eyes unseen are watching. The gods, yes, but also the ancestors. You must understand, in the Norse world, the veil between the living and the dead is not sealed. It is a thin skin stretched taut over memory. Every longhouse holds echoes of those who have walked before. Their bones may lie beneath nearby mounds or scattered at sea, but their presence lingers in the wood grain, in the smoke, in the dreams of those who sleep too lightly. So, before the feast, a portion is always set aside. A small bowl of porridge, a cut of meat, perhaps a splash of mead, placed on a special plate and left near the fire or by a doorway. This is not waste. This is offering. To ignore the dead is to risk becoming one of them too soon. And then, the blessing. It is not always spoken aloud. Some households say little, a gesture with a knife, a glance toward the rafters. Others recite lines from the old songs, words that predate kings, passed from mother to son, from wanderer to seer. A common phrase, muttered softly in the smoke, might translate to, "Let the ancestors taste first, that we may taste in peace." In grander feasts, those led by jarls or kings, the rituals become more formal. A gothi, a pagan priest, may be called to lead the rites. Dressed in robes of dark wool, beard plated with bone and iron, he stands before the fire and lifts his arms. The crowd stills. A hush spreads like mist. The gothi does not shout. He speaks low in rhythms older than memory. He names the gods: Odin, the All-Father; Thor, hammer-bearer and protector; Freyja, the seeress of love and war. He may call upon the Disir, the female spirits who guard the bloodline. He may name the Landvættir, the spirits of the land. The walls of the longhouse seem to listen, wood groaning softly with age and weight. Sometimes blood is spilled. Not human, not tonight, but a chicken, perhaps, or a piglet. The blood is caught in a bowl and offered to the fire, to the gods, to the soil beneath. In smaller feasts, this step is skipped, but the memory of it remains. You notice now that every blade used tonight was cleaned with a strange thoroughness, not just wiped, cleansed. And now the toasts. You have seen these already, yes, but now you understand. They are not casual. The first cup is always to Odin. It is lifted by the host, in some cases, by the oldest present. It is raised high, turned slightly toward the fire, and then brought to the lips with care. Not a gulp, a ritual sip. The All-Father watches. The All-Father weighs. The second toast varies. Some offer it to Njord, god of the sea, especially if the household trades beyond the fjords. Others to Thor, especially if storms have been frequent. Some to Freyja or Freyr, depending on the harvest, the mood, or the need for favor. The third cup, that one is for the ancestors. Always, always the ancestors. The cup may be passed around. A drop poured on the floor for each name remembered, and many are remembered, even if the blood has thinned. Only after these cups are raised, only after the fire has burned for a while, and the smoke has risen through the smoke hole into the heavens above. Only then does the meal begin. And you, yes, you seated now among them, you wonder, did I miss these signs? Did I eat too soon? Did I reach for my cup before the third toast? If you did, no one has told you. Yet. But they noticed. Know that. The Longhouse notices everything. Still awake. Still resting in the flicker of imagined fire, the scent of pine smoke and spiced mead curling softly beneath your thoughts. Then answer me if you're not yet dreaming. What rituals did your family keep growing up? Were there silent moments before meals? Small customs that made you feel safe, connected, seen? Tell me below if your fingers can still find the keys. But if your eyes have grown heavy, if your breath is slow, if your dreams are beginning to braid with myth and memory, let them. The feast has only just begun. And the gods are listening. Manners? Not quite. By now, you have tasted their mead. You have chewed their salted meat, dipped your fingers into their marrow bowls, passed dishes heavy with smoke and salt, and the long memory of winter. You've watched the toasts, seen the glances, felt the weight of every silence. You've even breathed in their ritual, knowing full well that each moment in the longhouse is older than it appears, stitched into a tapestry woven long before you arrived. And still, something lingers just beneath the surface of your experience. A quiet dissonance. A curiosity. Why does no one say, please? Why are there no bows, no delicate pauses, no polite half-smiles or graceful refusals? Why are there no soft apologies when drink is spilled? No murmured excuses when someone reaches rudely across the table? No whispered corrections when someone speaks out of turn? Is it rudeness? No, it is not rudeness. It is something much more complex and, in its own way, much more demanding. For to survive a Viking feast is to discard everything you thought you knew about manners. It is to step into a world where etiquette is not a performance for the sake of harmony, but a battlefield where honor is the prize and reputation is the currency. In this hall, no one cares how delicately you hold your spoon. They care how steadily you meet their gaze. No one notices whether you cover your mouth while you chew, but they remember whether you spoke out of turn and what you said when you did. Let's walk slowly through these layers now, letting each one unfold like smoke from the hearth. Because the truth is, Vikings had manners, just not the kind you'd recognize. To begin with, there is seating protocol. As we have seen, where you sit tells your worth. But it does more than that. It tells your awareness of the unspoken code. To sit too high without invitation is to issue a challenge. To sit too low when you deserve better is to signal weakness, or worse, self-doubt. Your seat is your reputation, carved into wood and confirmed by the nods or silence of others. Then comes speech. There is no such thing as small talk in the Longhouse. You do not speak to fill the silence. You speak when you have something to say. And when you do speak, it must have weight, a tale, a boast, a riddle, a verse, something that offers value, even if veiled in jest. Idle chatter, especially from a newcomer, is discouraged, not by words, but by the simple act of being ignored. A silence that spreads like cold water, extinguishing the flame of your unwelcome comment. That is how correction happens here, not by direct rebuke, but by absence of acknowledgement. Your words float, unanswered, and die. Yet when a man stands to speak, a seasoned warrior or a seer, or an elder with time in his bones, the room listens. Even the dogs still. Eyes lock, breath holds. That is respect, not demanded but earned. Interrupting is a delicate matter. You may interject if your point is sharper, if your tale is stronger, if your insult is better timed. But beware, interruption is not impolite. It is provocative. And in this hall, to provoke is to accept that you may be answered with humiliation, or worse, with challenge. You must also understand boasting. In many cultures, boasting is seen as prideful, even shameful. Not here. Among the Norse, a boast is not a sin. It is an offering, a currency of personal myth. Men and women alike stand to recount their deeds, their victories, their trials. But here's the key. You must own your boast. You must speak it plainly without apology, and be ready to defend it with evidence, with witnesses, or, if necessary, with your fists. False boasting is punished not by insult, but by exposure. If you claim to have slain a bear with your bare hands, and the man 2 benches over knows the bear was already half dead, he will say so, loudly, and the hall will laugh, not at him, but at you. You may recover, you may not. That is the risk. Now, let us speak of eating. There are no forks, there are knives, always. Not just eating knives, but utility knives, hunting knives, bone-handled blades with intricate etchings. A man's knife is as personal as his name. You do not borrow another man's blade unless invited. You do not comment on the state of his edge, and you do not, under any circumstance, mock his carving. food is passed communally. The strongest are served first, not because they are most in need, but because they are most dangerous. To keep a warrior waiting is to court tension. Children are served last, elders before them. It is a subtle ladder, carved in silence. There are no dainty bites. You eat with purpose. You tear, chew, and swallow. You waste nothing. Bones are cleaned. Scraps are saved. To leave food on your plate is not impolite, it is insulting. It suggests the meal was unworthy, or the host careless. As for bodily sounds, you may be surprised. A belch here is not considered shameful. It may even be taken as a compliment, a sign that the food satisfied. But this is not license for rudeness. No one draws attention to it. It is acknowledged only through the smallest glance, a flicker of the eye, a ghost of a smile. What about drunkenness? Now we approach a delicate subject. To drink is expected. To become slightly unsteady, that is tolerated, even charming in the right moment. But to lose control, to slur, to stumble, to shout without wit, that is dangerous. Not embarrassing, but weak. And in this hall, weakness is not mocked. It is marked. A drunk who offends the wrong man may not be corrected with words. He may be escorted out, none too gently, by two men with cold eyes and warmer knives. If he is important, he will be forgiven. If he is not, he may not be seen again. This brings us to the quiet art of watching. In the Longhouse, your manners are not in what you say or how you eat, but in how well you observe, how quickly you read the room, how silently you respond to shifts in tone, in posture, in breath. You do not ask what is happening. You know, or you learn quickly. There is no hand-holding, no whispered warnings. No one leans in to say, "Now it's time to toast." You toast when the host looks your way. You raise your cup when the high seat raises hers. You laugh when the elder's voice falls, not because you understood the joke, but because silence then would be worse. And let us not forget fighting. Yes, fighting. For in some halls, to fight is not just permitted, it is part of the evening. A disagreement, a misunderstanding, a long-held grudge. These may bubble up with the mead, a punch thrown, a knife drawn. But there are rules. Blood may spill, but the host decides when enough is enough. The fight stops when she stands. And when it ends, it ends. No grudges are carried out into the snow, not publicly, at least. That is the difference between chaos and culture. Still awake? Still resting beneath imagined rafters, your body warm with firelight, your breath slow with the rhythm of old songs and older silences. If so, answer me this, in the calm between thoughts. Could you live by these manners? Could you speak only when your story was worth hearing? Could you boast with truth, eat with courage, and fight when needed, but stop when told? Or are you still trying to say please in a world that listens for strength, not softness? Tell me below, if you're not already dreaming. And if you are, let the dream continue. For the night has more to teach, and the Longhouse holds more stories still. Storytelling, or verbal combat. It begins with a pause. Not a silence. No, a pause. A breath held between toasts, a moment when the fire's crackle becomes the only sound in the hall, and eyes begin to turn, slowly, collectively, toward a figure rising from the bench. There is no announcement, no drum roll, just the slow, familiar scraping of wood against packed earth, the shift of weight, the clink of iron or bone beads in a beard, the soft rustle of wool cloak brushing across worn shoulders. And then it begins. a story. Or so you think. But here, in this longhouse of frost and fire, stories are not offered. They are thrown, and those who speak do not simply wish to be heard. They wish to win. You are in a place where every word is honed like a blade, where tales are not shared for comfort, but for dominance, where the line between poetry and provocation is thinner than the skin of a slaughtered pig, and just as easily pierced. To speak here, you must claim the room. Not with volume, never with volume, but with weight, with tempo, with the slow, deliberate unwinding of a truth so deep that others must lean forward just to hold on to it. And that is where it starts. A tale, perhaps, of a shipwrecked voyage, a distant raid, a duel upon a cliff where wind tore at tunics and only one man walked away. The details are thick, almost syrupy, soaked in metaphor. The waves were not waves, they were the teeth of Jormungandr. The wind was not wind, it was the last breath of a dying god. The enemy's sword did not flash, it sang. Those gathered murmur approval, some softly striking table with fist or mug. A woman closest to the fire hums under her breath. An elder nods, eyes closed, perhaps remembering a different version of the same tale. But another voice rises, not loud, not eager, just colder. A second speaker stands. He does not challenge the first man directly, not yet. That would be clumsy. He simply begins his story, another raid, another duel, another storm. But this one, sharper, bloodier, and suspiciously similar. His blade did not just sing, it laughed. The waves did not bite, they dragged men under like jealous lovers. The duel did not happen on a cliff, but atop the ribs of a long dead sea serpent. It is not a retort. But it is. This is verbal combat. And you are watching it unfold in the open, beneath the rafters, in full view of the fire and gods and gathered guests. There are rules, of course, not written, never spoken, but followed with the same reverence as any law. First, do not stutter. To hesitate, to fumble, is to expose your flank. To forget a name, a date, a detail, even in fiction, is to lose. Your words must be steady, certain. Even if your tale is a lie stitched from moonlight and wind, it must be told as truth. Second, do not repeat. A good story in this hall is not a song chorus. It is a climb, each verse higher, harder, bloodier. If you resume imagery, echo a phrase, lean too often on the same crutch, they will notice, and they will bore. Boredom, here, is a kind of death. Third, know your audience. Tell a story about sea battles to a hall of farmers, and you'll earn yawns. But speak of wolves in the birchwoods, of crops devoured by trolls, of spirits in the frost, and you may just earn silence. And silence here is not absence. It is power. The highest prize. The speaker who commands the longest hush has won the room. But remember this, the tale itself is never the point. It is the control the tale grants that matters. You tell the story to place a stone in another man's shoe, to make him shift uncomfortably, to force him to wonder if the tale is about him. Sometimes it is. These are not idle stories. These are stories with edges. You watch now, as the second speaker begins to weave a new character into his tale. A coward, unnamed, who fled when battle turned. A man who left his comrades bleeding, swam away in the dark and returned weeks later to boast of his victory. He doesn't name him, but heads turn, just slightly, toward the first speaker. He says nothing, not yet, but his jaw tightens. Here it comes. He stands again, slow and calm. He does not protest, no denial. That would be weak. Instead, he tells another tale, one of wolves, of betrayal, of a camp ambushed by torchlight. He speaks of one warrior who stood when others fled, who took 3 blades to the gut and still gutted his foe before falling, who, before dying, whispered the name of the man who failed him. Again, no names. But now, all eyes turn back to the second man. The game is in motion. This may last hours, sometimes days. Story after story, each layered with insult too delicate to name aloud, each countered with metaphors sharper than steel. And you, guests to this madness, are mesmerized. Still listening, still awake beneath the imagined timber roof, the flickering hearthlight dancing across faces both stern and sly. Then lean closer. There is more. Not all storytelling is conflict. Some of it is seduction. You see a woman now, not young, but radiant, her voice slow and silken as summer rain, rise and begin a tale of a farmer who married a fox. The hall quiets. Men smile, women smirk. It is a riddle wrapped in flirtation. The fox speaks in riddles. The farmer listens poorly. In the end, it is not the fox who is tamed, but the man who wakes each morning wondering why his boots are full of feathers. The hall laughs, but it is a low laugh, a warm laugh. And somewhere, one man flushes. Perhaps the story was for him. Perhaps it was for you. This, too, is combat, but of a different kind. And now, an old man tells a tale of winter. No battles, no blood, just snow, and the loss of his brother. He speaks slowly, like someone pushing through the drifts. When he finishes, no one laughs, no one claps, no one speaks. That silence is sacred, for he has won not the game, but their hearts. Only the fire answers him, crackling soft approval. These are the rules. These are the stories. This is not polite dinner conversation. This is verbal war paint. This is the proving ground of the mind, the tongue, the soul. Still with me? Still curled beneath your blanket, your breath shallow, your mind drifting between your own memories and these ancient ones. Then tell me, what story would you tell if the Longhouse turned toward you? A lie? A truth? A truth dressed as a lie? Let me know below if sleep has not already claimed you. But if your eyes are now too heavy, if the fire has faded to embers in your thoughts, rest. For in this place, even silence is a story. And you, tonight, have listened well. Blood, boasts, and boundaries. By now, you've felt the rhythm of the feast. You've watched men rise and fall by the weight of their words. You've tasted the salt of their meat and the smoke in their ale. You've traced the lines in the beams above your head and followed the silent threads of status that bind this entire hall together like sinew over bone. But no Longhouse remains calm forever. Not when the mead flows too freely. Not when pride sits too close to the fire. Not when old stories dig up older wounds. And certainly not when the night grows deep enough for the masks to slip and the old Norse truths begin to show their teeth. What begins as laughter always has the potential to end with blood. This is the law of the feast. And here, now, you feel it shift. It starts quietly, always does. 2 men sitting near the hearth. You've seen them all night. They've spoken, toasted, even laughed together. But now, their voices dip. The smiles tighten. The stories lean a little harder toward accusation. A name is repeated more than once. A phrase, when the weather turned, is used as a blade, not a memory. One man rises, the other does not. The first man speaks, not loud but clear. He tells a story again, one we've heard earlier in the evening, but this time there are new details. A betrayal, a forgotten debt, a knife that wasn't drawn when it should have been. The second man stands now, but not to speak, to stare. Around the longhouse, others begin to still. The fire becomes the only sound again. The dogs slink to the edges of the hall. Even the children, those half-wild shadows at the walls, go quiet, sensing what is to come. The host does not move. Not yet. She waits. Because every feast must walk this knife edge. Every gathering of warriors must dance along the rim of violence and know when to pull back, or when to let it fall. And here is the truth no one will say aloud, but everyone knows in their bones. Sometimes a fight must happen. Not because the insult was unforgivable, but because someone must prove they are still worthy. These men are not strangers. They've likely fought together, shared food, lost friends. But memory is not protection here. Not when the boast has been made. Not when the story hits too close to an unhealed wound. So what happens now? They do not lunge. They do not brawl. That would be crude. No, this is ritual too. The challenge is made, formally in the old way. One man takes his knife from the table, not drawn, just held, not waved, just shown. The other nods. They step to the center of the hall where the fire casts no shadow, where everyone can see, where honor can be weighed. Their knives are not large, these are not swords. These are the blades of farmers, hunters, fathers, but they are sharp, and what matters now is not death, it is proof. To yield would be worse than pain. To hesitate, unthinkable. Still with me? Let your eyes soften. Let your breath stay slow. You are safe. You are only watching now. Not a part of this, just drifting through it like smoke. The fight is brief. They do not circle. They do not shout. A movement, a slip, a cut, shallow, along the forearm. A grunt, another movement. A second cut, this one to the thigh. They bleed, but they do not fall. Then the host rises. A hand lifted, palm out. It is over. Both men step back. The blood is visible. The silence is full. And then, applause. Not loud, not mocking. Respect. This was not a duel of rage. It was not murder. It was not vengeance. It was a reminder that boundaries here are set not by law, but by the willingness to defend them. That boasting is a flame, beautiful, warming, but capable of burn. That blood can be part of the feast, not as tragedy, but as testimony. And yet, not all fights are fought with blades. You see it now, elsewhere in the room, a woman and another woman, seated close, their voices low, their smiles too sharp. They do not fight. They do not rise. They simply look. And those looks carry the same weight as knives. Because boundaries here are more than physical. There are stories you do not tell, jokes you do not make, names you do not speak unless you are prepared to deal with the consequence. There's one man in the corner who has not spoken all night. He has laughed, yes, nodded, toasted once, but no story, no boast. You think perhaps he is timid. But then you notice everyone watches him before they speak. And you understand. He is the man who crossed the line once and never had to again. Still awake? Still resting beneath your blanket, warm with fire and the weight of old truths. Then ask yourself, in your own world, do you know where your boundaries are? Do you defend them, or let others cross them in silence? share below if your eyes haven't closed yet. And if they have, sleep now. The Longhouse watches over you. The fire still burns. The blood has been spilled, but the feast continues. There is one more chapter left before the night ends. And that is when the feast becomes a reckoning, when the party turns into a trial. The fire has burned low, not out, never out, but low enough now that the shadows it casts dance differently along the timbered beams. They stretch, they sway, and they lean like listeners in prayer. The mead has long since stopped tasting sweet. It now lingers on the tongue like smoke, like sleep, like the edge of something unsaid. All around you, the air has thickened, not with heat nor with noise, but with pressure. The way a storm feels before it breaks. The way a held breath becomes its own kind of sound. You feel it in the shift of weight across benches, in the sudden stillness between toasts, in the fact that no new story has been told in several minutes, and yet no one has left. You were told this was a feast, but now it feels like a trial. Not a courtroom, not a place of laws, but a reckoning. A reckoning not bound by scrolls or signatures, but by memory, and the Longhouse remembers everything. Here, guilt is not proven, it is sensed, like smoke in wool. Like the unspoken name everyone knows but refuses to say. The man who sat too close to the high table without invitation. The woman who served herself before the eldest had lifted her spoon. The youth who made a joke no one laughed at and laughed again, thinking repetition might save him. These are not crimes, not officially, but they are notes in a song that is playing now and growing louder. You feel it most in the gaze of the host. She does not speak. She has barely moved in over an hour, but her presence sharpens with every passing moment. She is no longer simply a matron, nor a chieftain's daughter, nor even a woman with authority. She is now the flame's twin, silent, burning, impossible to ignore. And around her, the Longhouse has slowly folded in on itself, as though the walls have leaned inward to hear the ending. The ending. Yes, that is what this is. Feasts like these are never just about meat and stories. They are designed to reach a point, to build, like a fire, fed with twigs, then branches, then logs. And now the flame licks high, golden and silent, demanding something. The gods have been toasted, the ancestors fed. Blood has marked the floor and been wiped away, but one thing remains. Judgment. It will not be announced. There will be no bell rung. But it will happen, and all gathered will recognize it for what it is. The accused, if that's the word, may not even realize the weight of what they are about to face. But the trial begins when someone stands, and someone always does. It happens slowly, almost lazily. A man rises from his bench, horn still in hand, but his drink forgotten. He does not smile, he does not sway. He is sober, or at least sober enough. His voice is not loud, but it cuts through the room as though drawn from steel rather than throat. He begins a story, and for a moment, it sounds like the kind you've heard all night. A tale of winter storms, of a stranded cart, of wolves and hunger. But then the names begin, not masked in metaphor this time. Names spoken plainly. Real people, present people. There are no jokes, no embellishments, no laughter. This is not a tale meant to entertain, it is a testimony. He speaks of betrayal, of oaths broken, of warriors left behind, of spoils taken and not shared. He speaks of cowardice in battle, of men who arrived late and claimed honors they had not earned, of one man in particular who stood at the fire that night, drinking deeply, laughing loudly, pretending that the hall had forgotten. But the hall never forgets. There is no applause, no interruption, just silence, and when he finishes, he does not sit. The accused remains seated for a moment, then rises. This is not the place for denial, not the place for long explanations. The Longhouse has no interest in excuses. What it wants, what it requires, is acknowledgement. Not necessarily guilt, but awareness. The accused must speak now, and speak in a way that holds the attention of the room. A poor defense is worse than none. A deflection is worse still. To mock the accusation, to attempt to rise above it, that is the most dangerous move of all. He does not do that. Instead, he tells his own story. A counter-myth. His voice is rougher, strained, not by drink, but by memory. He admits to hesitation. He admits to fear. But he also speaks of saving another, a youth injured, lost in the trees, mistaken for dead. He says that what looked like cowardice was something else entirely, a decision, a sacrifice, and he says it with eyes that do not flinch. Now, the room listens. Not just hears, listens. Not for truth exactly, but for something older than truth, for tone, for presence, for the feeling in the gut that tells the body whether to believe or not, and the Longhouse begins to decide. No one speaks, but the shift happens. A hum in the room. A soft clink of horn to table. A murmur from the rafters. Maybe a dog stirring. Then the host stands. Her presence silences all. She does not speak long. A sentence, perhaps two, but they are final. She declares not innocence, but remembrance, that both men have been heard, that the gods and the fire will judge, that the night is not for vengeance, and that sleep must come with peace, or not at all. And with that, the trial ends. Not resolved, but concluded. This is how reckoning works in the Longhouse. Not with verdicts carved into stone, but with truth held up to firelight, turned slowly and then left to cool in the silence of mutual understanding. Sometimes the guilty are punished. Sometimes they are forgiven. Sometimes they simply return the next feast and choose not to speak. You breathe now. You hadn't realized you'd been holding your breath. The tension begins to ease. The fire still burns, but softer. Its crackle no longer sharp. The room exhales. Someone begins a low song, just a few notes, wordless. A woman laughs, not harsh, but real. A child cries and is comforted. The Longhouse lives again. Still with me? Still drifting through the smoke and wood and snow. Eyes half-lidded, mind half asleep. Then tell me, have you ever stood trial in silence? Have you ever faced a moment where words were knives and every eye in the room asked who you really were? Tell me below if your fingers still stir, or let the question follow you into sleep. For the feast is over now. The fire will dim. And soon, only the embers and the truth will remain. The fire has burned low. Only the faintest glow now clings to the coals, deep red like the pulse of a dream. Around you, the Longhouse is quiet, not empty, but hushed. The laughter has faded. The stories have settled into the beams like smoke. And the warriors, the mothers, the old gods and their shadows, all have taken their leave. Even the dogs are sleeping. You have made it through the night. You sat at their table. You shared their food, their stories, their silence. You walked to the edge of their words and watched how a feast could turn into a storm. You saw what happens when pride becomes challenge, when truth becomes trial, and how even in that ancient world of stone and ash, the act of gathering, of being together was more than celebration. It was survival. Now, as you lie still beneath your own roof, in your own time, let your breath slow even more. Let the last warmth of the fire drift into your chest. Let your body become heavy, like the stones that ring the longhouse walls. Let your thoughts become soft, like the fur draped across a warrior's shoulders at rest. And if your eyes are still open, just barely, let me say this. Thank you for traveling with me tonight. Thank you for listening, for staying, for honoring the old ways in your own quiet way. If you're still awake and not yet in a rush to fall asleep, I'd love to hear from you. What part of this night stayed with you most? Was it the food, the ritual, the danger beneath the laughter? Share your thoughts below, if your fingers haven't drifted off already. And if this story brought you even a little peace, consider subscribing or giving it a gentle thumbs up. It helps to keep the hearth warm and the scrolls unrolling. Now, sleep. You've earned it. And somewhere far away, in a hall of flickering firelight and falling snow, the feast waits for you again. Good night, traveler,